Rabbi Jacobs approached me, actually at the Levaya of Rav Gettinger, and he immediately thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and have a Hesped here in Yeshiva to share a little bit of my memories, Rabbi Jacobs' memories, and I think Rabbi Jacob felt that his life, his lifestyle, what he had to give Klal, so it could be an inspiration to all of us. So I'll just say a few words of my own experiences. I was fortunate enough to grow up in the shul of Rav Gettinger on the Upper West Side. Wow. I think I davened there for, I guess, good 12 years of my life. From age, let's say, 11, 12 till I got married, more or less, in and out. In my teenage years, he had extremely big impact on my whole way of living. So let me just, before we begin even discussing anything, maybe I'd like to just maybe describe the man himself. We even talk about what he did and what we could learn from him. Rav Gettinger was really a genius. He was known already as a prodigy as a young boy. He finished Shas before he was married and knew it. He had a tremendous memory, a genius of a memory, a very deep and profound understanding of any material that he learned. A very original thinker, extremely original thinker. He had chidushim to say about everything and anything. Interestingly enough, even though he was really pretty much of an intellect, he had also tremendous deep emotions. Very emotional man. Very compassionate man. Caring man. So like a very, very beautiful mixture of like everything we're looking for in a human being. Both intellectual side as well as the emotional side. His lineage was very impressive. I should say his wife's lineage, but he became part of it. He became part of it. His lineage was like most of us. I'll tell you guys, if you look back far enough, you'll find the same thing. Go back a few generations. He came from a Hasidic family, not rabbinic. I mean, they were religious. They were, mitzvah observing. I think, they were living in an Orthodox part of Brooklyn. But he was a very American-born. Of Gettinger, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was American-born. And he, being the genius that he was chosen to enter one of the most distinguished rabbinic families that exist on the yeshiva map to this day. That it was the Volozhin family of the Volozhin rabbinic dynasty. He married the daughter of Harav Rif. Rav Rif, I actually had the schus of seeing. Rav Rif was, let's get it down quickly, okay? Rav Rif was the son of the son-in-law of Rav Shapira. Rav Shapira was the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin. Rav Shapira was the son-in-law of the Netziv, who I'm sure you've heard of by now, the Hamek Dover. I'm sure you've heard of Chumishir, right? Who was also the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin. Who was the son-in-law of Rabbi Yitzchok Volozhin, the son of Rabbi Chaim Volozhin. Okay, pretty impressive, pretty impressive. So even little me, that I got to see Rav Rif, right? I got to see someone that actually lived with his grandfather and was a student of his grandfather for years, who was the student and son-in-law of the Netziv, that was the student of someone that spoke to the Vilna Gaon. Not so far away. Not that far away. Made you feel very, very close. In the Masoret chain of Klal Yisrael, he brought you very, very close to your roots, to our roots, right? He very much became part of the Volozhin lineage, very much became part of the Volozhin Masorah and what they had to offer. I think he knew the Netziv by heart. He would throw things around left and right. It was amazing to watch. And he was, represented a continuity, another link in the chain of the Masorah of the Volozhin family. Okay, beautiful, right? It sounds like someone who's like the perfect candidate to Rosh Yeshiva somewhere here in Yerushalayim, maybe Yeshiva, maybe, the head of a bezin somewhere, at least in Borough Park, right? Something. Perfect candidate. And here he was. Divine Providence put him on the Upper West Side. Now, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the Upper West Side. Nowadays, it's Gan Eden, compared to what it used to be. Okay? It's not saying much, right? If anyone who's a little bit familiar with the Upper West Side, it's not the type of place you would, the Torah vibrant Jew would like to be. Let's put it that way. Nowadays, much better. Nowadays, they have kollel, community kollel. They have a lot of shiurim going on. I mean, no shul will consider it itself a dignified shul without a daf yomi happening every day. When I was a kid growing up there was no kollel. I mean, there was almost no kollel altogether in the States, but there was no kollel on the Upper West Side. There were 2 daf yomi shiurs of around 5 or 6 old European men speaking Yiddish that got together every night. That was about it. And here you are. You have this unbelievable Gadol B'Torah, literally. He was a real Gadol B'Torah. Sitting there, man of genius. He has shas to give. He has understanding, and he has knowledge in all areas of halacha to give. And the people of the Upper West Side maybe were not the ones who knew how to appreciate it. How do you appreciate something like that? I mean, it's hard to converse with him in shas. It's a bit, most people haven't even gone to yeshiva. Us kids, I could barely read a Gemara. I couldn't really do it on my own. A little Jastro. This is the pre-art scroll days, right? It wasn't the most enjoyable task. You got the little art scroll, you try to make up, you're happy if you get through it somehow. It was very difficult to go ahead and converse with a, genius in Torah. How do you get something out of such a person? I guess I'd like to share with you a Gemara that you guys might not have learned in Brachos this year, because in the first parak. Did we learn the first parak? Okay. It's a rough parak. Gemara says as follows. Omar Rabbi Yitzchak Rav Nachman. Oh, I'm sorry. Omar Rabbi Yechlan Mishum Rabbi Shem Bar Yochai. Gedola Shimusha Shel Torah Yosem Limuda. Being an attendant or a servant to a Talmud Chacham is greater than the learning of Torah itself. Shenema Po Elisha ben Shafat Asher Yotzak Mayim Ayilei Eliyahu. This is an interesting story over there in Nach. Yehoshaphat, the king of Yehuda, was looking for a prophet. He had a problem. He wanted to go ahead and make a war with somebody. He wasn't sure if it was going to work out. So he needed a little bit of prophetic help to see what was going to happen. So he was looking for a Navi. He asked around, is there any prophet in the neighborhood? So they told him, yeah, there's someone here called Elisha, and he used to go ahead and wash the hands of Eliyahu HaNavi. Says the Gemara, Lomad lo ne'ema. Doesn't say he learned from Eliyahu HaNavi. Eliyotzak. He poured water on the hands of Eliyahu HaNavi. He was his attendant. He used to go ahead and take care of him. Melamed shegedola shimusha yosem limuda. Attending to a Talmud Chacham, going ahead and serving a Talmud Chacham is greater than learning from a Talmud Chacham. Interesting idea. Great, you help him put on his coat, open up the door for him. It's greater than learning from him. Why? What are you going to walk away with? What are you going to have? You're not going to have any Torah from him, are you? Well, maybe you will. It must be you will, right? We're saying over here, this man became a prophet, not necessarily from learning Torah, from having some sort of a formal class, but he was Mishamesh. There's an interesting Rambam that I'd like to share with you in Sefer HaMitzvos. The Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvos discusses the idea of clinging to Hashem, v'davakta bo. You should go ahead and connect yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How do you do that? How does one go ahead and accomplish that? Says the Rambam, Hi shetzivanu lihidavek im hachachamim. Go ahead and cling yourself to Talmidei Chachamim. Ulihisyached imohem. Find private, what they call prime time. That's how the Talmud Chacham. Ulahaspid b'yeshivasam. To continuously be in their company. Ulihishtatef imohem b'chol ofen me'ofanei hachevra. Be partners with them in all areas of interpersonal relationship. B'machal b'mishte. Eat with them. Eat and drink with them. Ube'esek. Do business with them. Kidei shiyagia lanu bazeh lihidomos b'maaseyim. We should therefore come and emulate their ways, emulate their actions, their regular, physical, mundane actions. Ulaha'amin hadeos ha'amitios midivreim. And to go ahead and believe the true beliefs that they go ahead and tell us. Converse with them. Talk to them. Observe them. Look at them. See how they act. See what they do. You get a lot more sometimes out of that than going ahead and having a formal class. You can go ahead and discuss and learn on Masilas Yesharim. You can go ahead and maybe discuss an idea from the Maharal about the rights and the wrongs of life. But when you see it living in front of you, how it's done, that makes a tremendous impact. That's where you grow from. We did not understand Rabbi Gettinger's intellect. And we were unable to really converse with him in Torah. A little kid. Yeah, really. Some of us came along to shul. Even if we didn't, teenagers growing up, we didn't. We weren't able to. He went ahead and, came down to our level. Nice Divrei Torah, he used to say, oh, that was great. But there's one thing that we gained. Could be at the time we didn't realize what we were gaining. But we saw the manifestation of Torah. That's something I don't think you can find very easily. Shas. How does Shas look when it davens? How does it look? How does someone who's, a real baki in halacha, knowledgeable in all areas, how does he go ahead and perform a Suda? How does his Yom Tov look? So that's going to show us, how does Torah want it to look? Observe the man. I didn't realize that's what I had till I went to yeshiva. And I realized how broad and how amazing Torah is. I realized, wow, look what it can really build a person. And I look backwards and I says, wow, we're little kids. And we took it as a matter of fact that that's the way things are supposed to be done. That's what we brought up with. We were brought up with a goal of a Torah. And we're seeing, how does Torah do things? I'll give you just a few examples. One example, this example is really, I'm just going to say remain with me till this day. Davening. Right? Davening, it's on top of the list of being a religious Jew, right? First thing is, you go to shul 3 times a day, and you daven. Okay. But, when you walked into the Young Israel of the West Side, davening had altogether a different meaning. It wasn't the thing that religious Jews do 3 times a day, to be called an Orthodox Jew. Come in and get it over with. Well, if you went to the first minyan, maybe. If you went to the rabbi's minyan, you saw what davening meant. Psukei de Zimra was a beautiful song that was said word by word, out loud. Not screaming in any way. But we came to shul, how do you daven? How do you daven? I wouldn't know where to start. Is it silent dedication? Is it meditation? Is it, getting all, zealous movements? Like, what do? You saw. So how does Shas daven? How does a man with all that Torah daven? Every word clearly said in the most beautiful way. Shema was Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shemayim. That part of brachos the guys learned. He saw a man every day, twice a day, accepting upon himself the Ol Malchus Shemayim. It wasn't just saying the words like, you got it, let's go, let's move on. It was part of his life. Every davening was an experience. Yom Tov, I must say, was something that was really beyond description. Till today, I still remember his Yom Kippur of Young Israel. During the time that we reenact the Kohen Gadol going into Kodesh HaKadoshim, I had no idea what the words meant in that machzor. I had the slightest clue. No idea. But if you go ahead and you hooked up with Rabbi Gettinger, you felt you were there. You were there in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He was saying it with such enthusiasm, with such fervor, with such concentration. It was amazing. He put you there. He made Judaism experiential. You saw, what does it mean? What does it mean a person that understands what he's doing? A person that goes ahead and can appreciate what Judaism is. You see the depth, the intensity, and the beauty, and the joy that someone can have. That's what Genja was about. I'm just going to mention a few points. Those are just like the point of tefillah. Another point I'd like to mention was his Avas Yisrael, his love of every Jew. Like I said, he didn't have much of a learned, audience to go ahead and give his shiurim to. So who came to his shiurim? He had a shiur. It wasn't popular in those days to have a daily shiur. Yeah, once a week shiur, twice a week shiur, whatever it was. Well, listen, in those days, on Columbia University, which was uptown, there wasn't much going on campus. There weren't too many Cuban rabbis around. It wasn't as popular to go ahead and have anything organized. To many, many people, Rabbi Gettinger was the address. And they were his Talmidim. I think the bulk of his Talmidim, for really decades, were those students that need either from religious homes, could be from hardly Orthodox homes, but they were either in, undergraduate school, graduate school, new Bali Tshuva that needed someone to hold on to while they were there. And he was the address. And I remember, I saw my own eyes, no matter who you were or what you were welcomed with the same warmth, the same smile. He kept really scores of people going during their time there. Just like at the Levaya, my brother, I have a brother here in Israel, came from Rehovot. He said, I just came in, I brought along my neighbor, came along as well. I said, Steve, how do you know Rabbi Genja? So he goes, what do you mean? He told me that he lived with him for 4 years when he was in Colombia. These are things no one knows about, what were going on day and night. That's the Avas Yisrael that he had, no matter who you were and what you were. He helped out. There was an organization called Ezra's Torah. Ezra's Torah was made to go ahead and help out Talmidei Chachamim that need financial help, to help out young orphans, to help out widows. He was in charge of that organization, I think, for maybe, must have been like 30, 40 years as well. Helping all types of people from all over the world, from all circles. Kids who had problems, me being one of them, could always feel an open door. He would talk to you. No matter what you were, anytime, he would help you, he would just take you in. What I mean to say about true Avas Yisrael, unfortunately, some of us have a little bit of a selective Avas Yisrael. If he's your type of guy, he's in. Could be he has to be open-minded to be your type of guy. If he's a little bit narrow-minded, just don't have Ava to him. Sometimes the other way around. You only like narrow-minded people. A little bit too open, the liberal guys, they're out. Right? Whatever it might be. You might love Bali Tshuva, not very particular about FFBs. Or vice versa. But that's not Avas Yisrael. Guys, we're missing the point. If that's how we walk out, we're missing the point. He loved everyone. Bal Tshuva, yeshiva students, men, women, black kippah, white kippah, no kippah. Everyone was loved. It was amazing to watch. Another point I'd like to say was his modesty. There were like 2 points I'd like to say about his modesty. Number one, like I mentioned, he had a tremendous impact on people around him, but he never pushed himself to make that impact. He didn't try to make himself noticed. He didn't come in and try to go ahead and impress people in any way. That came by itself. He was a man of tremendous stature. If you watched, you were interested, you saw, extremely noble person entering the room. Never ever. Never voiced his opinion unless he was asked. I've seen it many times. There might have been a discussion going on. Never ever voiced his opinion unless someone asked him. Sometimes people would act to him disrespectfully as well. Things pop up in shuls. There are boards of directors, congregants. I was always amazed, even as a child, you could sense it sometimes. Nothing. Self-control to the point that wouldn't bat an eyelash. Just sat there, Nothing going on. I was always amazed. One other point was something that today maybe is not as popular. It's worthwhile mentioning. There was no such a thing as not having time for people. No such a thing. It wasn't that if the person you're asking a favor from, or is waiting for you, has to wait more than 1 minute, he starts looking at his watch or his SMS, or whatever it might be, because you're wasting his time. You have a man here that was used every moment of the day. Never wasted time. And somehow, he always had time at any given time for anyone. You could walk all the time without appointments. If it was really, really busy and he had to go somewhere, he'll excuse himself. And he'll say, please come back tomorrow, without hours, without, writing down anything in his social calendar, whatever it might be. Always had time for people. And I learned from that somehow big people somehow always have time. The little guys somehow are extremely busy. Don't waste a second of theirs because they're really in a big rush. But big people have time. Also felt it came from his modesty, That's what he's here for. What are we here for anyway? It's not to help our fellowship. Okay, these are just a few points that I thought maybe we can learn from, we can incorporate. Really, Rav Genja made a tremendous impact on me and many, many other people. And just continuing in his ways is probably, the best way we can give honor to him and appreciate the tremendous gift that Hashem gave us.
They said at Rabbi Gettinger's funeral last week, I watched the American funeral, they had a video of it, and they said about him he had 4 fathers. He had his father, he had his father-in-law, Rav Riff, that Rav Kronengold spoke about. He had 2 Rebbeim who were mamish Rebbes to him, who were Gedolei Olam. One was Rav Hutner, and one was Rav Henkin. And I thought a lot about that statement, and I realized that I also had 4 fathers. I had my father. I had someone named Rav Moshe Cohen, who was really the first connection with real, authentic yeshiva, Lithuanian, the old style Judaism. He was the one who got me to 2 different places. He encouraged me to go to yeshiva, where I met Rabbi Rosenberg, who was the 3rd of my fathers. And he was also the one who, when I came back from Machon Shlomo, told me, now that you're back, go to Rav Mendel Gettinger, he said, he's straight. He said, and he's not only a genius, he's also smart. Now, I didn't know exactly what that meant at the time. I found out over time. But Rabbi Gettinger became, when I came back from Machon Shlomo, and when a number of us came back from Machon Shlomo, now you have to realize, in those days, there weren't organized reunions, and there wasn't Skype, and there weren't phone shurim, and a long-distance call internationally was very expensive. And so when you left yeshiva and you came back to America, you were pretty much an orphan. And many of us came back as orphans, and the person that we found was, and I just don't know bigger praise than to say that a group of people coming back from here, where we had really had our own Har Sinai, we were able to, and just came back to America with such a different world, and felt so bereft of our connection to Torah and our connection to big people and people who cared about us. Not just people who cared about us, people who were big who cared about us. And Rav Gettinger was that person who we were fortunate enough to have in our life. I had the schus of being, I think, the first one of our group that really chased him down. He was not looking for Talmidim. He was not looking for more students at all. He was a very, very busy person. He was busy with his shul. He was busy with the Ezra's Torah, which Rabbi Kronengold mentioned. He was learning night and day. He was taking care of people in his shul. He was a very, very occupied person, and he was not interested. He was not running out looking for new students. And so it took a while to become his student. But in that process, he became really the fourth person I think of as having been like a father to me. And so last week I said goodbye to the last of my forefathers from that generation, from that world. It was not easy, as I said, to become his Talmud. It required, first of all, starting to go to some of his shiurim, just asking him questions. Eventually we wore him down. We just started asking him questions. Ask him halachic shaila here, halachic shaila there, a little eitzah here, an eitzah there. And eventually we just broke through. We broke through. I think he saw in the Baalei Tshuva who had come back, I think he saw people that were very sincere and very serious about the Yiddishkeit and who really were longing to make a relationship with somebody who was just so authentic and so big. Someone big enough and broad enough to be able to answer our questions and to be able to understand us and that we could look up to and know that we were getting real, true Das Torah. And he was that person. I think that the reason that the Baalei Tshuva so loved him, and there really were a group of us that became his Talmidim, was a few quick points. I'll mention the points as just bullet points, effectively, and I want to explore one or two of them. He was, when you sat with Rabbi Gettinger, when you entered his home, you were literally entering a different world. You were entering the world of a connection with Torah, not just Sinai, but through Lithuania, through Volozhin. You entered the world of deep, aristocratic Torah, depth, knowledge, midos, compassion. We make our jokes about Lithuanian Jews. We think Lithuanian Jews are just learning machines. The real Lithuanian Jews, when you met anyone from that generation, they were people. They were such deep people. They were people of such refined and deep feeling. In addition to their learning and their erudition, it was just you walked into like a different dimension when you went and you sat with him, and everybody felt that. He was, as Rabbi Kronegold mentioned, he was a genius. He knew everything, so he could answer your questions on anything, halachic questions, any kind of question you had. But it was more than that. He was also just such a straight person. He was a person who just was absolutely straight. And we all know we live in such a crooked world, and we always make so many excuses for so many people that we meet. Oh, this one needs to run his institution, so he has to, and this one needs more students, and this one needs more this, and this one needs more. Rabbi Gettinger was just straight. And he was a shalom person. He was a person who not only was filled with learning, but his midos were just totally worked out. He was a shalom. Rabbi Gersfeld always talks about the real goal of life is to become a shalom, to become a complete person. He was that. His devotion to truth, to emes, was absolutely unbending, to the point where he sacrificed his own popularity in many ways, because he would not do anything which he felt was not covenant Torah. And I'll speak about that in a moment. His humanity and his caring and his compassion were just beyond belief. I heard his son say about him at the Levaya that many people told him, your father saved my life. And I went up to him and I said, your father saved my life on many occasions. And I want to talk about that as well, because it's a debt of gratitude that I owe him. So ultimately, it was really coming face to face with a real, true embodiment of Torah in the most powerful way, and that's, I think, why we loved him so much. His breadth is hard to fathom. He was a person who, as we said, could answer everything in halacha and the Gemara and all of that. His eloquence as a speaker in English was phenomenal. His vocabulary, his way of phrasing things, the emotion that he put into it when he phrased things. He was a real, true speaker. He was an amazing speaker. And because it was married up with content, it was the ultimate person to ever listen to. It was unbelievable. His shiurim were all his own chidushim. So we would go and we would sit and we would listen to this ravishing Torah. You just couldn't believe how beautiful Torah could be. He was also just so broad. Rabbi Kronegold didn't mention, but he had an advanced degree in mathematics. I think he had an undergraduate degree, if I'm not mistaken, from Columbia in mathematics. He had studied engineering. He'd studied aerodynamics. The interesting story was that when he got married, his plan was he was going to do a PhD in physics. He told me the story. He was going to do a PhD in physics. But he joined the original kollel of Rav Hutner. And Rav Hutner said, I know you want to do this physics thing, but just give me a year. So he learned for a year in Rav Hutner's kollel. Came back at the end of the year to go ask permission to go do his PhD. Rav Hutner said to him, just one more year, just give me one more year. And so it went for like the next 5 or 6 or 7 years. He said he finally came to him like at the end of 5 or 6 years of one more year, and he said, Rav Hutner, like, I'm not Rebbe, I'm not going to be able. Rav Hutner looked at him and said, physics schmizics. That's what he said to him. But he wound up staying with Rav Hutner for many years, and by the time it was that point at which he felt he could really leave, he said he already had kids by then, he already had to make a parnasa, and so that was the point at which he became a rabbi instead of going the direction of studying physics. But you're dealing with a person who, when you walked into his living room, he had rooms full of svarim, which were all worn out from his learning them. But he also had stacks of books that were being used on physics and on mathematics and on astronomy. We were once learning the Gemara Brachas with him. We had a shiur that he gave to a group of us, and we were sitting in his house with him at his table, learning the Gemara Brachas. And I don't remember, I think it was the 9th paragraph, I'm not sure. We came to a Rashi on a Gemara that was talking about something to do with the stars. And Rashi, in this Rashi, made a mention of the celestial sphere and how it appears to the eye across the course of the year and how it changes. So I remember Rabbi Genjer was intensely precise in learning. Absolutely, you could not skip over anything without absolute clarity, absolute precision. And he said, Rashi is describing here the celestial sphere. He said, and this was now we were a group of highly educated guys. We all thought very highly of ourselves. We had guys who were MBAs there. We had guys who were we had science. I don't think there was a scientist there, but we had a bunch of guys with advanced degrees there. And he turned to us and he said, Rashi's speaking about the celestial sphere. You do understand how the celestial sphere works, don't you? And we all kind of uncomfortably looked at each other, and we said, well, not really. And he said, well, you won't be able to understand the Rashi unless you understand basic astronomy. He said, I guess I have to teach you a little basic astronomy. So he proceeded to speak for the next 15 or 20 minutes about the celestial sphere, how it appeared, where the stars were, how navigation worked, how it changed and shifted across the course of the year, and once he did that, now we understood the Rashi. So he was not a broad person because he liked science and thought science was interesting, because he liked mathematics because he thought math was interesting. Everything was a way of understanding Kadosh Baruch Hu's world, and everything was fitting into Torah. Everything fit into Torah. He once said to me about mathematics, he said to me, mathematics is the handmaiden of all logical thought. And then he said, one of the things he liked about math, in learning, he says, people who understand math understand there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. There's a precise answer, and being a little bit off from the precise answer means you're wrong. And he said, too often in learning Gemara, people say fuzzy things. He says, math teaches you to be precise. And when you apply mathematical precision and logic to the Gemara, he said it forces you to be much more clear and much more precise. So there was nothing, his sons said about him, there was nothing in the world that did not interest him, and that he didn't find interesting and fascinating, that he didn't make himself expert in, except for sports and entertainment. Those two things he had absolutely no interest in, because I think he just felt that they were more or less in the service of the Yetzer Hara. But that when it came to anything in the intellectual world, everything fed a Torah vision and that breadth. It was an amazing thing. That clarity, just to be able to come into contact with someone who's so clear, crystal clear about everything, it's just it's an unspeakable joy to be able to be around such a person. In terms of his aristocratic, dignified connection to that deep, deep Masorah and Klal Yisrael, to Volozhin and to everything that Rabbi Kronengold mentioned, I never felt it more than I felt it at his Pesach Seder. My wife and I went twice to a Pesach Seder at the Gettingers, 2 years in a row, basically across the first year of our marriage, first and second year of our marriage. And the first thing you noticed when you walked in was this. He lived, first of all, on Riverside Drive, overlooking Riverside Park. They must have bought the apartment, I don't know, 1940s, 1950s, something like that. And it was this big, grand apartment. It wasn't they didn't do anything fancy in there, but it was beautiful. It was old world. It was old world furniture. It was old world. It was a long dining room table. which I remember there was a big bay window in his dining room. It was a big formal dining room, and a bay window. And they had the table pulled up to the bay window, and Rabbi Gettinger sat, right? You're supposed to recline when you eat on Pesach, right? When you eat the matzah. The table was pulled up to the bay window, and when it was time to recline to eat the matzah, he literally reclined across this bay window where he had cushions set up. And so you saw a person who literally looked like a king at a long banquet table. And the other thing, when my wife went in there, she picked up one of the incredible pieces of like antique something or other on the table. Mrs. Gettinger, the Rebbitzin Tibar Lacham, told me, she said, careful with that. That was my great-grandfather's, Pesach, kli that they gave down, that they handed down to us. You walked it literally when you had Pesach Seder there, you were connecting with generations. Part of it was the physical, literally, you were eating on china that their grandparents had eaten on. Part of it was the regalness with which they conducted the whole thing, the dignity, the regalness. Part of it was that even the Torah that he sent over, he said, the grandfather said this, the Netziv said this. He said Torah over from his own family going back, his and his wife's family going back generations. That's what you were connecting with Torah, Kalim, Torah, dignity, aristocracy, connecting you back to just worlds that didn't exist anymore. It was an unbelievable experience. Never mind the fact, by the way, his Seder ended at about 5 a.m. And at 5 a.m., when we were completely worn out and stumbling and getting ready to stumble home, he would say goodbye to us and he would sit down. He would start reciting Shir Shir at that point, at 5 a.m. And we would go. And this was twice. Don't forget, there's 2 Seders in America. This was twice, both Seders, right, all night, every year. One student who had just a little bit interested, dabbling in Judaism. He was a dean of one of the deans at the Harvard Law School. Rabbi Gershenfeld called me and said, this person wants someplace to go for Pesach. Where should he go? The person wasn't from yet. He said, where should he go? And I said, listen, it's a little risky, but I would send him to Rabbi Gettinger. If you want to give somebody a real, true, authentic, real experience of Judaism, send him to Rabbi Gettinger for the Pesach Seder. It was totally transformative. I got a call that week, a couple days later, that this person, Bruce Cohen, had a totally, utterly transformational experience. His whole relationship to Judaism changed as a result of seeing that world come to life. And Rabbi Gettinger would say, one of the things he said reminded me so much, he said, at the Pesach Seder, when we're all participants, we're all actors on a stage, and we are meant to truly experience. The same way Rabbi Kronigel described him as experiencing the Kohen Gadol's avoda on Yom Kippur. That's what Pesach was like. It was literally like walking through the Red Sea, and it was an unbelievable experience. When it came to the way that Rabbi Gettinger gave Das Torah, the way he answered a question, he also just showed me what it means. I can think of 3 specific questions I went and asked him. 2 of them were business-related questions, and they were the kind of questions that a normal person answering a question would have tried to answer it in 15 or 20 seconds. One of the questions was, I've been offered a job internally at my company to change from what I'm doing to going to a different part of the business, from the buy side to the sell side. Oh, both of them are analyzing stocks. Someone would have said, where are you going to make more money? Where are you going to make more money, or what else is to do? That was one of the questions. Another question was, should I leave the job I'm doing, or should I go to another company to do the exact same job? That was another opportunity that came up. The third one was, should my wife and I take my family to Eretz Yisrael, even though my kids are older? Those were the 3 shilas. I asked him hundreds of shilas over the years, but in terms of 3 earth-shattering, life-changing shilas, how did he deal with them? Each of those questions was 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours. In which he took on a role. You saw the Talmid Chacham's mind and objectivity and curiosity come to light. How could he possibly answer a question on which side of the business I should be on if he didn't understand the business fully? How does the sell side work? Who are the clients? How do you get paid? Who gets to judge you? Who's in charge of you? Who's your boss? Who's your constituency? The other side of the business. How does that work? He unfolded it like I don't want to say like a detective, because it's like a Talmid Chacham. But he unfolded every aspect. 2.5 hours. It was totally riveting. Watching this mind show me all the things that I had not considered, hadn't thought of. unfolded it, until really, at the end of 2.5 hours, it was all laid out so beautifully, so perfectly, so elegantly, like almost like a symphony, just like the whole thing laid out. At which point, he said, now what would you like to do? And by that point, it had all become so clear. I said, oh, Pashut, I'm going to do that. Great, that was it. He was not interested in pushing his agenda on me. He was interested in taking as long as it took to discover what's the real question here and how do you approach it. And so it was with the other questions as well. It was an unbelievable thing, and the company always had time. 2.5 hours. Who has 2.5 hours to sit with some Baal Tshuva to answer a question about this side of the business, that side of the business? Who cares, right? They both paid well, who cares? It was an unbelievable thing. I once went to him because I was, good Baal Tshuva coming back from Machon Shlomo, and I was looking through Mishnah Berurah, reading through Mishnah Berurah, and I came across a halacha that just shocked me, because the Mishnah Berurah basically talked about something that was usher, and it was something that I was absolutely doing. And this was before I understood all the nuances of what's the Raisa, and what's the Rabbanan, and what's a Midas Chasidus, and what's this, and what's that. And I went to Rabbi Gettinger, and I said, no, and the answer is no, I will not tell you what halacha was. It's because you're all doing it. Okay, so I went to Rabbi Gettinger, horrified. I said, I just saw in the Mishnah Berurah that it says I'm not allowed to do X. Am I allowed to do that or am I not allowed to do that? I mean, it says in the Mishnah Berurah I'm not allowed to do that. He said to me, he looked at me and he said, I think a person should be balanced. I said, yeah, but it says in the Mishnah Berurah, he said to me, I think a person should be balanced. And that was his way of telling me if I was going to jump up to this level of Midas Hasidus in this part of my life, but on the other hand, I was down here in this part of my life, I'd be a freak. I would not be a normal person. So he was interested in my being a balanced person. It was an unbelievable thing to hear someone of such stature saying to me, be balanced. He wouldn't say usher, and he wouldn't say mutti. He wasn't going to say that the Mishnah Berurah's halacha was incorrect. But the impression I got was that for me, at this moment, it's not the right thing. Something to grow into. He also once really reprimanded me when I asked him a question. I once asked him a question, and he answered it. And based on his answer, I said, well, how about this? And I gave a little more information. He said, what? Just 1 second. He said, you asked me the following. You gave me the following details. Are the details you left out? And I said, well, I didn't think so, but this and this I didn't think was so important. This I didn't think was so important. He said to me, young man, he said, every she'ela is a chatzi teretz, which means every question you ask is already half an answer. Based upon the way you present the question, the information you give, and the information you leave out, you've already led to a certain answer. You're not being objective. You're not being smart. You're not really asking an honest question when you do it that way. So it taught me a lot. Just the way he answered questions, the way he approached it was an unbelievable thing. His straightness was something that just was phenomenal. I once asked him a question about, a friend and I had started a business, and we were thinking about doing a joint venture with 2 guys who were Jewish but not frum. And the type of business we were in, according to these guys, it had to operate on Shabbos. It had to operate on Shabbos. So I went to Rabbi Gettinger to figure out, is there some way that we can be partners with these guys, even though the business is going to operate on Shabbos? And he basically said, you'd have to work it out as follows. He went through a very complex scheme in order, I don't call it scheme, it's halacha. Came through as a very complex partnership arrangement, whereby we would basically not be partners at all in the profits that accrued from the whole Shabbos, from the whole Shabbos operation of the business. And we would be partners in the rest of the business, and it would have to be worked out like that. In the end, when I told him we weren't going to do it, it was almost like he was so relieved that we were not going to, he was so relieved. He said, I'm so happy. He said, Hashem is going to bless you in so many other ways for not getting involved in this. He said it would have been mutter, but to be involved with it, he said he was so very happy not to be. There was a story that he told me. I heard it slightly differently than one of his sons said it over, but there was I think there was one of the congregants in his shul when he was a young rabbi. And the person had some kind of question about an insurance question, where if he said a certain thing, there was some kind of accident that happened or something, where something burnt down, whatever it was, there was an insurance claim involved. And the person realized if he could just change this detail or that detail, right,
he'd get paid out the whole thing. He wasn't making the whole thing up, but he had to change a detail in order to make it a more likely thing that he would get to pay out. So Rabbi Gettinger took him to Rav Henkin, who was his Rebbe. And Rav Henkin, as the question began to be spoken, said, "Stop. Don't ask me such questions." He says, "I'm a machmir. I'm strict on these kind of questions. Go to a different rabbi. Go to a different rabbi and ask him." Rabbi Gettinger said he never took that person to another rabbi, and he himself learned. That's how you answer a shiloh. He says, don't help people. Don't help people do things which are not really, really straight. Don't help people do things which are dishonest. And you saw it in his own life. I asked two of my friends for their stories about Rabbi Gettinger. I wanted to read two of them. There's a fellow named Nadav Serling. I'm saying this for the sake of the family, if they're going to watch this, because they know and love Nadav. Nadav is a Baal Tshuva from my era. I don't think he went to yeshiva. He's a musician. Think Jacob Kafka personality, right? Like, in other words, a very creative, very artistic musician personality. Brilliant, brilliant fellow. Rabbi Gettinger was his man. He just two stories I'm going to read you that he said. He said, 23 years ago, I was relatively new to Torah and mitzvahs. I was married and had a baby and another on the way. We had no money. I was trying to build a fashion jewelry business, though I had interest in neither fashion nor jewelry. Rather, I was highly motivated to make a lot of money, as this was the only hope I had to achieve my greatest goal, which was to move to Eretz Yisrael and have a more real life. At that time, I wore my tzitzis out for all to see. To say the least, this was a bizarre sight in fashion showrooms and at designer jewelry shows in high-fashion boutiques. It was also a rare case in which bizarre appearance was not an asset in the fashion world. Our business was growing, but not fast enough, and my dreams of millions felt far away. It occurred to me that maybe wearing my tzitzis out was contrary to wise hishtadlus, and that it was both unnecessary and perhaps a hindrance to success. So I did what one did in need of truth and wisdom. I went to speak with Rabbi Gettinger. "Do you want to wear them out?" he asked. "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because they help me to remind me of who I am and to keep a buffer of safety between me and the world which this business requires me to spend time in." He thought for a minute or so, closing his eyes, as he often did when considering a response to a question. Then he opened his eyes, looked at me directly, and he said, "Wear them out, and Hashem will bless you. And if he doesn't bless you in this business, he will bless you somewhere else." So I continued to wear them out. Several years later, the business collapsed, leaving me broke, in debt, and desperate. The desperation continued and worsened for well over a year. But through blessing felt far away, I held on to the words, "And if he doesn't bless you in this business, he will bless you elsewhere." Then through a series of events bordering on the miraculous, I was hired to work for a large Wall Street investment firm. From there, I built a successful 12-year career which culminated in my moving to Eretz Yisrael 6 years ago. Blessed in ways I could barely have imagined the day I asked Rabbi Gettinger about my tzitzis. Okay. Second question. Second story from Nadav. Early on in the days of the jewelry business, I had a small dilemma. Though most of our revenues came in the form of checks and money wires, we did a steady business on the side selling jewelry for cash to private clients. I knew that the law required that one must report cash income for tax purposes. I also knew that common wisdom, including that of many from people, was that only a fool would do this. I didn't want to report the cash income, but I wanted to do the right thing. Except for one problem. I hadn't asked Rabbi Gettinger if it was correct. No, sorry, I missed the line. I didn't want to report the cash income, but I wanted to do the right thing. Several people told me that since this was a law that almost all citizens ignored, I didn't have to report the cash. That sounded great. Except for one problem. I hadn't asked Rabbi Gettinger if this was correct. Here was his response to the question. Rabbi Gettinger said to him, "There's a story in the Gemara. A man is traveling to a town. He comes to a fork in the road and a boy is sitting there. He asks the boy, which of the two paths leads to," he asked the boy, which of the two paths leads to his destination. The boy said, "The way is short, this way is short, but it's long, and this way is long, but it's short." Rabbi Gettinger then explained that the way that was short but long required that the traveler trespassed on another's property, whereas the way that was long but short would include no trespassing. The message was clear. Be straight, and you'll avoid the troubles and entanglements which come from trespassing laws, even if doing so may seem the quicker route to your destination. In the most practical of ways, Rabbi Gettinger taught me what has become a lifelong lesson in navigation. Thankfully, I have wasted no time on legal problems, nor have I lacked cash, even after taxes. So that was what it was like asking this person questions, business questions, any other type of question. His care and his respect for other people was amazing. It's worth just a few ideas about this, and then I'll close. When I first got engaged, I came to him and I said, "I'm engaged." Now you normally expect the Rebbe to say all kinds of things to you. He took my hand and he smiled, that warm smile that he always had, and he took my hand. And he said, "I want to tell you a piece of advice." He said, "Sacrifice many things to make sure that your wife always has help in the house." He said, "That way she'll be a mensch. She'll always feel like a mensch." That was the first piece of advice he gave me. I've tried to make that the first piece of advice I give to Chassanim since that day. What he spoke to, she should live and be well, his Rebbitzin, you can't imagine it was like addressing an aristocrat. It was like addressing a queen, the way he spoke to her, the way she spoke to him. You saw two people who addressed each other with such respect, such derech eretz, such beauty, such with a quietness and a pleasantness. You couldn't see that and then feel that you could do anything less. Any shiloh that I ever asked him that had anything to do with the family, usually any of the Eitzah questions, the questions I mentioned before, he always said to me, the first thing he always said to me was, "What does your wife think?" Very first thing. You're going to think about a big Eitzah, you're going to be on this part of the business, that part of the business, do this job, that job, Eretz Yisrael, this, that. What does your wife think? He taught me, always, always, always think of your wife first. Think of how she's doing physically, make sure she has help in the house, and think about her happiness and what she wants out of life. You don't always have to agree with her, but you have to always start at that point with what does she think. And he always made, in his speech, he always made everyone feel chashuv. Everybody felt important when you spoke to Rabbi Gettinger. I saw him speak to little kids, and the little kids would light up the way he spoke to them. I saw him speak to Talmidei Chachamim. I saw him speak to me, to other Bali Tshuva. He always spoke to everybody with incredible derech eretz. He dedicated his life to Ezra's Torah, which Rabbi Kronengold said he ran for decades. It was he used to call it the Kodesh Kadoshim of Stuckers. They had almost no overhead. It was run from a raggedy little office on the Lower East Side. It was started at the behest of the Chafetz Chaim and Rav Chaim Oizer to create a society that would help Talmidei Chachamim. It was run by Rav Henkin. It was run by Rav Riff. And then after they were gone from the picture, it was run by Rabbi Gettinger. It came out of the Levaya when his son had to take over, and his son, once he passed away or became, I guess, incapacitated, one of his sons had to take over. And they found out so many things they never knew. For example, he had borrowed on his personal budget, he had borrowed massive sums of money to cover shortfalls. He himself went and borrowed money to cover shortfalls so that they would not disappoint some of the Talmidei Chachamim and poor people that they were taking care of on any given Yom Tif or any given part of the year. His Shabbos table was an interesting place. Here he had this massive Talmid Chacham. The Rebbetzin also is a person of tremendous learning. She was the daughter of a gadol who I think did not have sons, as far as I know, and is a tremendous person of tremendous learning herself, a brilliant person. And their Shabbos table was such an interesting place. There would be the pair, the 2 or 3 or 4 65-year-old Bachram from the shul. I don't know. I never knew were they divorced, were they widowed, did they never get married? They were a little bit. They were people who had no place to go on Shabbos. Not very interesting conversation. Not the kind of people you want to bring to have your scintillating, uplifting Shabbos experience. But they were part of his world, and he took care of them Shabbos after Shabbos. There was a family where the father had passed away, leaving 2 boys, one 10 and one 9, in his building. He took it upon himself to take the boys every single day to shul, every single day, every day, to say Kaddish. They became part of his family. He raised them. Mamish raised them. One of them spoke. One of them is now Rosh Kollel, and a massive Talmid Chacham who spoke at the Levaya in America. And he talked about, Rabbi Gettinger, like Rabbi Gettinger's talus on Yom Tov became a talus not for his 2 sons, but for his 4 sons. And walking home became not walking home with 1 son on each side, but with 2 sons on each side. And there were extra 2 seats in the row that he said, he literally, they became his sons. They became his sons, and he raised them and brought them up. I remember when I told him we were expecting our first child, he took my hand, like he always took my hand at those types of moments. He only said one thing. He said to me, "Oh, how your life will change." Which I have tried to impart with as much sincerity as I can when our own Bachram tell me that they're expecting their first child. When I say he saved my life, there were 2 issues. I just want to leave you with these, and then just one observation from the Levaya in Jerusalem. My wife and I went through a very difficult time trying to get engaged. There was a lot of family issues that tried to keep us apart. And most of it had to do with the fact that I was a penniless guy coming back from yeshiva. Sound familiar? Okay. And they just didn't get that. Nobody got in her family. How do you get married if you're penniless and you've just come back from yeshiva? How do you get married? How do you take responsibility for another person? And after months and months of agonizing over it and back and forth, the whole thing, we finally were given permission. You can get engaged. At that point, I thought to myself, now that I've finally been accepted by the family, maybe I will now. I went to Rabbi Gettinger and I said, maybe now I really should do the responsible thing, and I will put off the engagement, 6 months, 7, whatever, so I can get myself established in business and get myself, get a toehold, get a foothold. Took my hand, as he did in all these big moments. He said, "Oh no. He said, "Get engaged." He said, "You'll see." He said, "You'll get engaged." He said, "You'll find a job." And he said, "The job won't pay very much, but he said, you'll struggle and you'll make sure that he said, your wife will work." He said, and he went, and he sort of took me through this whole multi-year process where my wife and I would both work, and we'd have a little bit of help in the house, and then my wife would be expecting, and then she would have a baby, and she would stop working, and I would be able to make more money as a result of that by that point. And he sort of took me through this long, and it was like he was just reading a fiction novel to me. And he said to me, when he was done telling me this, he said, "I've been around a long, long time." I think he must have been probably his late 70s by this point. He said, "I've been around a long, long time. I never saw anybody starve to death." He said, "You're going to see, you're going to do the right thing, and Hashem is going to take care of you." And sure enough, we went ahead and got engaged, and Baruch Hashem, Hashem took care of us. Baruch Hashem. The other time he saved my life was when my son Eliyahu, should be well, was born 3 months early, and was in intensive care as a 2-pounder until he got to 4 pounds 5 ounces when he finally got out 3 months later. And it was a very, 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 an incredibly lonely, scary, difficult time in my life. I was not living, my wife had gone out to her parents' house where she was basically convalescing from having been in bed for 6 months. And I was living in New Jersey, she was on Long Island. I would only see them on Shabbos. And every night was spent taking a train by myself out to the hospital on Long Island, being with the baby for an hour and a half with this little baby fighting for his life. And then I was sleeping on the couch of a local rabbi in Great Neck, and then getting up and starting the whole thing again every single day. And this went on for months, and it was a grueling, just horrifying experience. And I didn't know who to reach out to. I didn't know who am I going to talk to? Who am I going to cry? Whose shoulder am I going to cry on? So almost every night leaving the hospital, I would go to the payphone. We didn't have cell phones those days. I would call Rabbi Gettinger. And he would just sit there and speak to me and listen to me and be soothing and say, "It's going to be okay." And somehow, I don't know how he knew it was going to be okay, but it was okay. And he always strengthened me and just made me feel that my pain was his pain. And in that process, it relieved the loneliness and relieved the pain. And there's really no words I have to express my thanks for that. I was standing with this fellow Nadav that I mentioned before. We were standing in the Levaya in Jerusalem. Now, Levaya in Jerusalem was like going into a different universe. It was like going to a funeral for a Lithuanian goat. It was all the Rosh Yeshivas and Rosh Kollels from the Brisk dynasty. These are all the people associated with Beluzhin and Brisk and so all the Soloveitchiks were there. And all these Yerushalmis and the people that run Ezra's Torah and the Rebbeim that they were involved with. And the whole Levaya, almost except for when Rav Beryl Wein stood up, who was an in-law, their children got married, he spoke briefly in English, and a grandson spoke briefly in English. Except for that, almost everything was in Yiddish. So I'm watching it, a Levi. I felt like I'm in a different world. I'm like, where am I? I'm like deep in the Yerushalmi, Litvisha, learning Rosh Yeshiva world, listening to Hespedim, which I cannot understand a word of. And then I look at Nadav next to me. Again, think Jacob Kafka. I'm looking at a guy next to me who belonged there even less than I did. And I looked at him and I thought to myself, and I said to Nadav, how broad this man must have been. That these people are crying over his Patira, and we're crying over his Patira. We're a couple about tshuva. You're a musician. I'm a little bit involved in the learning world, but I'm still about tshuva. And our friends at home who are in business, they're crying over him, Bali tshuva. And then I see a guy, modern Orthodox kid from the West Side, who was also there at the Levi because he happened to be in Eretz Yisrael. And he came up and he was crying to one of the sons that he never had a loss like this. Rabbi Gettinger was his father. Modern Orthodox kid. And here are all these Yerushalmi Gedolim. And I said to Nadav, what a big, broad person he must have been. It's unbelievable that all these people from so many walks of life are crying over him. And Nadav said, we're very fortunate. We were very fortunate. And that's what I just wanted to really say here was such a big person to be able to spend a couple of decades in the shadow of such a big person, have such a big person in my life and in the life of my family and involved in every major decision when we were over there, which got us back here and kept us sane over there and kept us focused over there. To see that type of leadership, straightness, strength, beauty, coveted Torah, willingness to sacrifice and even suffer tremendously for coveted Torah by not doing things which he felt were not straight or for the sake of popularity that he didn't feel were proper coveted for Torah. That type of self-sacrifice, that type of compassion, it was an unbelievable thing to see, to experience, an unbelievable thing, and to have that around our family. And Halavai, we should learn from it, we should emulate it, and we should live up to it.